Today, our guest is Phil Renshaw. Phil, he started his career in international banking, working in London, New York, and Sydney. He then moved into a corporate treasury and corporate finance world as a finance director in the IT sector. At this position, he tuned in to the important fact that it is actually the people in a company that make the difference, that makes the results and thereby the financial numbers. With this insight, Phil started a whole new chapter in his career. He went back to the university and got a PhD. And today he works as a researcher and also as a management and executive coach and a leadership development facilitator. When you talk to Phil, it's easy to understand that the passion he has is for teaching leaders the skill of coaching by focusing on everyday life situation. So today, Phil is joining us here to share his views on how to unite the leading and the coaching skills and how it is possible to effectively coach your team in 10 minutes per day. Great to have you with us, Phil.
Thanks very much, Lena. It's always great to talk.
Likewise, I like that. So Phil, I gave an introduction about yourself, but it would be wonderful to hear your personal story in your words about your professional background and your journey and why you do and what you do today.
Thank you. Well, I guess you already identified the really important piece. Maybe people didn't pick it out, but the really important piece is that I spent 20 years of my career as a finance professional. So I was a banker, I was a treasurer and a finance director. And I was driven by the belief that the numbers were the answer. If you focused on the numbers, on the projections for a business, and you always maintain that focus, then that was the future. That was the way forward to success. And we don't really have the time today, but there was a couple of big aha moments for me in life when I realized, you know what, that's not correct. Finance is critical. Don't get me wrong, you do need to understand it because it's the language of business. So whatever role you play in business, it's really important to understand that language. However, what generates success is the people. So it's all about the way you lead people, manage people, coach people. And that truly was a massive insight for me.
The title of today that I gave to the students joining this call is Uniting Leading and Coaching Skills to Develop Your Team and Its Members. I like to start up with, what is the first thought you get when you hear this title, or the first thoughts?
When we talk about uniting leading and coaching, it's really important to us and to me, because very often people think and describe coaching as being a separate thing. Now we're coaching, now we're not. We would say that's possible, but not normal. So I'm a professional coach. That's part of what I do as well. So I go into organizations and coach people from all ranges, all seniorities, one-to-one. So when I'm doing that, I am absolutely coaching all the time. However, for most of us in our daily lives, particularly when we're working, that's not what's happening. We're drawing on the skills that together create this thing that are coaching, but we don't have to do it all in one go. So leading and coaching are really, interwoven with each other. So that's, really important to understand. And you will notice people who describe this differently, and we think incorrectly, making people think that coaching is just, I do coaching now, and now I do something else called leading. And we would say, no, they're too interwoven with each other for that to be true.
Can you clarify what you mean with leading and what you mean with coaching, so everybody are on board and have the same picture of what leading and coaching is?
They are very closely connected. You see, we would say that this idea, which people normally do, of focusing on leading is ironically misleading. What we should be talking about is leadership, because leadership is what happens normally, and leadership involves more than one person. As somebody very famous once said, no leader leads alone. You can lead yourself, but really when we're talking about this idea of a leader, we mean you have to be working with other people. So what's happening is leadership, you're working together. I would suggest the best way to define or separate leadership and coaching is to think of what is coaching and then say leadership can go beyond that and involve other things. So we would say coaching is working with somebody else to help them find their solutions. So it's all about helping them to determine what is the best step for them, the solutions that work for them. So it's not your ideas, it's not your solutions, it's their solutions. And the essence of coaching is that. So there are many different skills that get you there, but it's all about helping somebody else to work out the right answer for them. And why this is so important is we can easily fall into the trap of thinking that my way of doing things is the right way of doing things. Well, my way can be the right way for me, but it most definitely might not be the right way for you or for somebody else. So when we give people in business, when we give people objectives, one of the really important things is saying, here's the objective, how you get there is up to you. And that's the idea of recognizing this sense that we have different ways of doing things. So to come back, coaching is this idea of working with someone to help them find their own solutions. And that's part of leadership. Leadership, however, involves other things. For example, leadership can involve motivating others. Leadership, traditionally, if you ask people, leadership will be described as setting a vision, setting a mission, determining where we're going to go, whether as a team or a company, how we're going to get there. So there are these different things that are beyond coaching, but coaching itself is, we would say, is woven into the middle of leadership. And that's what makes it important to separate out the skills that together create this coaching, this way of helping other people find solutions, because then you'll understand how best to use them. You and the people listening might have an idea of what leadership is. Jenny and I regularly work with people and we say, okay, put aside what you think leadership is in a textbook sense. Put aside what someone might have told you and think of someone who you really respect, someone you've worked with preferably, and you think is a great leader. Then tell me what it is that they do. And when we ask that question, and we do this regularly with people, and we gather all of the information, the answers we get are almost exactly the equivalent of coaching skills. So people describe their favorite leaders as people who listen to them, as people who ask great questions to help them with their thinking. They describe people who empower them, who build trust and rapport with them, who are there to support them. They give you, time and attention. They allow you to make mistakes and learn from them. And all of these things, we would say, come into the skills of coaching. And although there are some different ones, as I already mentioned, when we ask people to describe, what are those things that make these people special to you, they nearly always describe these elements that we would say are part of coaching.
How come you started to think about this, that is it possible to coach someone in 10 minutes a day?
Most people, when they go on training courses to learn about coaching, they are taught that coaching is a process. They are taught that you have to follow a process, do things in a certain order, possibly move around a bit, but nonetheless, this idea of a process, and one in which you are coaching. You are definitely coaching. There's no doubt about the fact that you are coaching. And our view is that that's wrong. It's very wrong. That's what professional coaches do. And it's usually professional coaches who teach others about coaching, which is where the mistake happens. In our view, this coaching is wrapped up in your everyday leadership. So when we wrote the book and used the title, Spending 10 Minutes a Day, the 10 minutes is actually not about you coaching someone for 10 minutes. It's about the idea that you spend 10 minutes thinking and reflecting on one of the skills of coaching. And we separate those out in the book, of course, to allow you to see them. And all the chapters are written so that you can read them in 10 minutes. You read the chapter about listening, for example, or about questioning, and that gives you some things that you can go and practice in your daily life. Whether you're a student or you're working on a project or you're in a company, whatever it is, doesn't matter. You do not need work experience to do this, but you practice experiments. And so that's the idea of the 10 minutes. It's the trigger for learning, for identifying things that you're going to experiment with that day. And then you basically build it into everything that you're doing all the time.
What are the main points to be able to coach on the go?
Well, let me answer it this way. I think there are two things. One is the awareness, and the other is these experiments. And we call these behavioral experiments, which is a term from psychology. And it's the idea that you test something out. You try a new behavior, see if things improve. And that might be as simple as trying to listen more and not interrupt, and see what it does. And it's really important to see it as an experiment. It's not a requirement, it's an experiment, because you need to be looking and thinking about what happened. Did it work or did it not work? Right? So you might do it for a week. You look back and think, what changed? Because some things might get worse. Some things might not work. I don't know what they are, but you will find that out, because it's all very personal. So you asked me what's the most important. I think that's one part, and then linked with that is self-awareness, because you need to be aware that you're doing these things, right? You need to have it in your mind that I'm practicing this particular new skill. I'm experimenting differently today. And these things are usually very small steps. It's also important. We're not suggesting that these are enormous overnight changes. That's also a big mistake in learning about leadership. People are sent on a course, they do a 2-week course, they come back and they expect their whole lives to be different. They're not going to be. We have to do it gradually. So awareness is really key to start noticing what's improving, what differences are happening. And you'll see that from those experiments. I mean, we think that there are 15 different dimensions of the thing we call coaching. And self-awareness is one of them. Reflection is another, because they are subtly different. I don't think we should go into them all right now, but they are subtly different, as is creative questioning that we mentioned, and generative listening that we mentioned. There are a whole series of different skills, but in terms of what's the most important, it's that idea of practicing those skills. And that relies upon this awareness of noticing what improves, because as it improves, it'll become part of your daily norms, things. You will become that person that someone says, actually, you know what, Jan is a great listener, or I'm stuck with this. Why don't we go and ask Joni, because she'll be able to ask questions that will really help me, even though she doesn't know what my project is. She really asks questions. She helps me think. And that's what I need right now. So, the whole thing is a journey, and it's also a continuous journey, by the way, because I am continuously learning from these sorts of things, realizing that I've forgotten to do something. I've forgotten. It's so easily done that we make assumptions and then we forget, which is why this idea of awareness and thinking, okay, it's a new week or it's a new month. I'm just going to pick up the book. I'm going to flick to a chapter, read again for 10 minutes. It'll remind me. It'll give me some clues, some ideas of the different things I can practice, and then I'll put them into play.
What is the difference with what you and Jenny have created? What different impact do you have than other similar theories, books, strategies?
You can separate out this thing called coaching, see that it's a subset of leadership, and notice that each of the different dimensions are actually straightforward. They're not complicated. They're straightforward. And that means anyone can start practicing them tomorrow, and you will get better at them. So great leadership, great coaching does not require business experience. It doesn't require it. It requires attention and practice, and anyone can do that. This idea of listening, it's a skill. You start doing it, put attention to it. The idea of asking great questions, practice it. You probably haven't practiced it before. These things can be separated out and practiced quite easily. It's just about attention and a small amount of time, hence back to the 10 minutes a day. Small amount of time will get you there. What we think is the most important part is break this stuff down, start practicing. And by, goodness me, by the age of 25, you could have cracked all of these things. You could be so much better than other people around you, and that will make a massive difference to your success.